Welcome to Training Without Travel, Idea Software Training via Practical Application, presented jointly by AuditNet and Richard Cascarino and Associates. This is the first in a Training Without Travel series covering Idea Software. This webinar covers the idea basics, getting started, and basics of importing data. I'm Jim Kaplan, founder and owner of AuditNet, and I will be moderating this webinar. Joining us is Richard Cascarino, principal of Cascarino and Associates, who will provide you with an overview of how to get started with the idea data analysis software from Caseware. This first course will get you off to a quick start in utilizing IDEA. While basic techniques in data importing are covered, practical knowledge that can be used immediately will also be included. Let me have Richard introduce himself, give you a brief overview of his background, and then Richard will begin the agenda and the presentation. Richard, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks very much, Jim. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Richard Cascarino. I'm the principal of Richard Cascarino and Associates based out of Colorado in the States. My background is IT audit training and consultancy. I am a past president of the Institute of Internal Auditors in South Africa, a member of ASACA, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and the book that you see in front of you is being advertised simply because it's coming out in about 2 weeks' time. Okay. Today's agenda, we're going to have a look at IDEA. We'll have a look at planning the audit, starting a project, importing data, and as I say, planning the audit overall. Computer-assisted audit solutions as such needed primarily because these days we're handling much bigger volumes of data coming in from multiple locations. And to handle that, we need to utilize the computer to audit the computer. So over the years we've seen the advent of computer-assisted audit solutions, which includes audit tools and audit techniques. And the whole concept is to take the software and merge it into an audit program so that it doesn't become additional to it, it becomes an integrated part of it. In doing that, we need to predefine our key control questions. The problem with a lot of computer-assisted audit tools is that auditors get their hands on them and they dive into the computer. And they can spend days browsing the computer, and it's all very interesting, but it may have absolutely nothing to do with the audit that we're carrying out or supposed to be carrying out. So we need to predefine the key control questions. What is it we need to know? What are we trying to find out about? Once we've done that, then we can use the technology to analyze the data and provide the answers. The theory being, if it's done properly, that it should increase the auditor productivity. Now, a few years back, there was a survey done which indicated that many auditors had computer-assisted audit tools, but in actual fact, it had not increased productivity. And partly that was because we were not predefining those key control questions. We were just going in and browsing. And the problem with browsing is it takes a lot of time. You don't know what you're looking for. If you get there, you don't know what you found. And it really does not inspire confidence in the part of the auditee. So we want to increase our productivity, which then increases our flexibility and allows us to be creative and to start looking at the data in different ways. Some years ago, I was asked by an audit firm if I could run some CATs on a bank. What they were doing was they were trying to ensure the accuracy of the overnight interest calculation. So I asked them what the normal methodology was, and they said they would take an account of a particular type, and they would take one account from one branch and recalculate manually the overnight interest to see if it matched. and then you would do that for 3 or 4 branches, and that was it. Based on that, they drew their conclusions. Using CATS, we were able to take every single branch, every single account in every single branch, every single type of account, and apply the rules for that type of account, and recalculate the overnight interest on every single account within the bank. And we were able to do that faster than the audit clerks were able to do 3 or 4 accounts from 3 or 4 branches using a calculator. So we're able to expand what we're trying to do and how we'll get to it. And that allows us to implement a consistent methodology regardless of the size of the data that we're analyzing, regardless of the nature of the data that we're analyzing, and regardless of the location of the data. Now, we're looking at IDEA today. IDEA, Interactive Data Extraction and Analysis, has been around for a while now. It's 21 years young, and there are some limitations within IDEA. You can only handle at any one database 2.1 billion records. If you're running IDEA Express, 100,000 records depending on the operating system, but for the standard IDEA you're talking 2.1 billion records. There are also limitations on file sizes. You can only have a file up to 1.8 exabyte file sizes. Now if you're talking exabyte, we're all familiar with giga, tera, then comes peta, then comes exa. So you're talking 1.8 quintillion, which is approximately enough to take in one file all of the information in 1 million Encyclopedia Britannicas and put them onto that. Okay, so you're dealing with a very large file size, and it's going to be as big as any auditor is ever going to need to look at in one single file. Okay, happy. In front of you, you've got the handouts for this webinar, and you'll see on there, there's a sheet which says Starting IDEA, which look like that, where we start. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be flipping from these slides into IDEA so that I will go through IDEA and execute these commands at the same time that you do, so that we can actually look at what is actually happening. Okay, so I'm now going to flip over into IDEA. I've already started it, but for your purposes, it would be starting from your program's IDEA, and then it's going to ask you to set the working folder. Now the working folder is a piece of the disk which will contain all of your data files, all of your equations, all of your views, and all of your import definitions. So let me switch over into IDEA. And I have currently opened up through File, set my working folder, and I've chosen one called Samples. You should find on your disk one called Samples. It comes standard with IDEA, and I've specifically chosen to use that one so that we can use the files that came with IDEA. It will then ask you for a project name and a period. I'm calling this one Webinar. And that brings me into this particular one, and I can look in there and I'll see all of these sample files, etc. Now, you'll see at the moment on the bar along the top, the button bar, everything is grayed out because nothing is active. So I'll pick up a file, any file. I'll simply double click on it, and all of a sudden everything becomes active. And you'll see that we've got 8 different areas within that screen. Up at the top, we have the standard menu bar, which looks like any other Windows menu bar with File, Edit, View, Data, etc. Below that, we have the Operations toolbar. Okay. And you can see on there, we've got all of these tools that we can look at and do things with. Okay. Over here, we have the File Explorer toolbar. At the moment, we're in File Management. I can change the tree view, I can refresh the list, I can change the display so that I can expand all, collapse this one selected one, so I can collapse that and it's no longer shown, or I can expand it. And again, I can delete files or folders, etc. The standard stuff. We have within this the File Explorer toolbar, which is actually just below what you can see on my screen at the moment. Let me drop that down and you can see it down here, where you're seeing running tasks, to-do list, etc. The standard, once again, information that you would expect to find on a Windows toolbar. We also have the database toolbar. This is the working area that the auditor would normally look at. This is where all of your data is going to arrive, and you can look at it, you can interrogate it, etc. We also have, again at the bottom, what are called flyout windows rather. So we can see the running tasks, we can see any to-do list that we've got, search results, conclusions, etc. We have a status bar, which will show us where we are and what we're in. And we have over here our properties window. And you can see that we're ticked at the moment on data. So in here we're seeing the data. I can also look at the history. And within that I can see that this is a file that was imported from Excel. There's imported from program files or IDEA user file samples. Data source was Excel, the sheet name it's called, Advanced Statistical Methods, 480 records on it, etc. And that is the IDEA script, the code that was used to create this. Now when you become an advanced user, you can create your own code, or you can pick up this code, copy it, edit it, and it can then become tailored for your particular organization. We can also look at field statistics. Now, field statistics allows us to look within our data. So if I look back at my data, I can look at the field statistics, and what it's giving me is for each numeric field. So we've got average temperature, heating cost, year average, etc. I can see the net value, the absolute value. Now, absolute value normally confuses people. It's a statistical term, and what it involves is taking the positives and the negatives, removing any sign. So if you've got, you can see down here, we've got a -5 in there. It will remove that that -5, and add the two numbers together. Here you'll see we've got 7,900 positive values. We've got -35. Giving us a net value of 7865. But if I remove that minus and add those two numbers together, I end up with 7935. Or to put it another way, the number of numbers between 7,900 and -35 is 7,935. And it will give me the absolute value for all of these figures. It's used in statistics when you're trying to calculate intervals. We've got 480 records, we've got 5 zero items, 7,900 positive items, 35 negatives, which gives us 465 of our records are positive, 10 of them are negative, and 5 of them, of course, we know are zero. There are no data errors that's found. It's given us 480 valid field values. If it finds anything abnormal, like an alpha in a numeric field, it will tell me that. It gives me the number of records at minimum, number of records at maximum, and a standard deviation. Gives us our population variance, our population skew, and our kurtosis. When you get into advanced statistics, that's very useful stuff. Okay, so let me go back into data. And again, now that I'm in my data, I can say that, for example, I want to take a control total of whichever I choose, salary. And there's my control total there right away. Now, I might be interested in that, but I might be only interested in it for branch B. You can see we've got branch A, B, C, D, etc. So I can go into my criteria and say, I want to know if the branch is equal to B. When I'm happy, I can give it a big green tick, so I've got branch equal to B. We'll come back so that you can try these yourself. And I'll give it a big green tick. And I've dropped all of the other ones. Let me just unlock that taskbar so that I can slide down here. And you can see at the bottom now, it's showing the number of records I can see are 96 out of 480. Okay, so 96 are in branch B. All of the rest are still there, but I've only got that. I can, and you can see the control total says 76 million. If I clear, I've got them all on the screen again, and the control total is up at 425. So if you want to try that, we're sitting in data. Okay, pick a file, any file. I've chosen that one that said sample advanced statistical methods, which happens to be the first one on the list. So if you double click on that to bring it in the middle, and then you'll see over on the properties that data is highlighted. If you click on history, you're into your history. If we go back to data, we can look at the field statistics on the data, and you can see it's highlighted them all. If I take off these ticks, I can reduce the ones that I'm interested in so that I've only got the salary, if that's what you want. That's showing me all of the files and all of the records, etc. You'll see I've got some there that are marked minimum value. If I click on that, there's the one with the minimum value. If I want to see the maximum value, and there it is there. Anything that's in blue, I can look at in detail. If I want to look at the positive records, there they all are. Coming back into your data, you can then go and browse through the data. So have a look through some of these at your own leisure. In the meantime, we'll go back into data, and you can see I took a control total. And I chose to do it on the salary. I could have done it on the average temperature. Doesn't really make much sense taking totals of averages. But if I wanted that as a hash total for the file, just a meaningless total that I can use for reconciling the file somewhere else, then I can pick it up on any field. Whether it makes sense to do so or not, my choice. I'll go back to salary because that's a meaningful number to add up. I could have picked up the heating costs or anything else that I chose. Now I want to look only for, let's say, branch A. So I'll go into my criteria and I'll put in a filter. And the filter is going to be the branch. So I double click on branch. Up here we have equals. So I want a single equals. And I'm going to put in an A. Now, A is alpha. It's a string character. You can see down there it says character. So I'll put in a quotes, and in the between them I'll put A. So it now reads branch equals quotes A quotes. And I can give it the big green tick. And now I only have A. And again, at the bottom of your screen, I think what I'll do actually to make it easier for you is I'm just going to expand this and do it this way. So that it makes it easier for me to jump around, and it makes it easier for you to see it. But you can see there we've got 96 records out of 480. It also shows you how much free disk space you have in case you're looking to import even bigger files. Okay. So if we're happy, then that's fine. What we can also do, I will take out that right-click on it and clear it. So I'm back to everything again. And now I want to build some indexes. So I'm going to build some indexes based on the information that I'm looking at within my file. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is decide what I want an index on. So let's say we want this in branch order. To get it into branch order, I can simply go in there and click on branch, and you can see there's a little down arrow there. If I double click in there, it's in alphabetic order, and you can see I've now got branch starting at A. It's ascending order. If I click again, I now have another index which is the branch in descending order. So I can look at branch A, and I can look at branch B. Are we happy? Again, I can go back to no index and put it back the way it was. I can delete those indexes the same way, right-click and delete index, and right-click and delete the index if I have no further need for them. Okay, that's very interesting, but you're not really all that interested in those statistical samples. So let's bring in a file. First thing the auditor wants to do in any circumstances is bring in data. So I can get rid of this one here simply by closing that file. It's still, the file is still here, it's just not in my database area anymore. So let's go and bring in a file. So we'll go up to our File, and we'll go to Import Assistant. The first one that you've got to choose from, and then Import to IDEA. Now when you're importing to IDEA, you've got a whole pile of different things that you can import. You can import from an AS400, from DBase, from Lotus, Access, Excel, ODBC we'll talk about later, but it's for importing relational databases. Print reports and Adobe PDFs, you can bring those straight in. You can bring in AIS and SAP files, text files, XML files. We're going to bring in an Access file. So I'll click on Access, and it's going to ask me to give it a file name. You should be in the same place that I am at the moment. I have a query coming in. I don't have a query coming in. I apologize. So in there, I'm going to look and I'm going to see what do we have within this particular file. And I want to look within Tutorial, and I'll see Customer. So I shall double click on Customer, and it's now in there. Now the big advantage of bringing in something from Access is you don't have to define anything. If I say next, it asks me to select the tables. There's only one table within this database, and it's called Database 1. So I'll say OK, I'm happy with that, and it's imported all of the data for me. It's defined the data, it's told me the customer number, and it's got the right length, and it's got the first name, then the last name. Everything it needs, it's done for me because it was coming in from Access. It will do the same thing if it comes in from Excel. It will do the same thing if it comes in from an ODBC compliant database. If it comes in from a print file, if it comes in from a normal text file, I'm going to have to tell it how to do it. However, we now have a file. Is everyone happy with that? If not, I'll delete it and we can go through it again. So I will delete the file. So it's now gone. We go up to File, Import Assistant, Import to IDEA. Okay. There's my Microsoft Access, and down here it's looking for the file name. So I will go in and I will say I want it out of tutorial. There is my customer Microsoft database, and it's filled in the name now. I will tell it next. It says scan records for field length, do it automatically, and I'll say OK. Output file name will be customer. And there we have my customer database. It's imported it in here. And now I can do the same things that I did before. I can look at the history. And there you can see it. Its table name is Database 1, although we're calling it it's Customer Database 1. So it's within the customer, and it's called Database 1. 341 records, etc. And that's the script that was used to import that information. Again, I can look at field statistics. It says statistics are not available for all fields. Do I wish to create statistics for all fields without them? Well, it's the first time through, so I'd expect to see that. Yes. And since we only have one numeric field in here, which is the credit limit, it's done it on the credit limit. And it's given me the net value, the absolute value, number of records, positive values, negative values, average values, etc. Now, in their own right, this might be valuable information for me as an auditor. Here we're looking at credit limits, and I can see that someone has got a credit limit, a very high credit limit. Some people have got very low credit limits. So I want to have a look at those. So I'll go back into my data. There's the credit limit. So I'll create an index on that credit limit. And that's starting off at the low ones and working its way up to the high ones. Well, I don't really want to do that. I want to look at the high ones. I want to prioritize based on credit limit. So I can double click on it again, and now I'm getting it in descending order. And I can see there's someone with a 3.9 credit limit, 3.9 million credit limit, etc. Okay, everyone happy so far? But that's not all we can do. Okay, one of the things that we typically want to do is look at things like duplicates. So let me go back to no index. Just click on no index, and I've got the whole file in front of me. And now I'm going to do some analysis looking for duplicate names. See if we've got duplicate customer names. So I will go into analysis up in the top bar, the menu bar, because it's the kind of thing I might want to do as an auditor. And I want to detect, and it's going to say detect what? Well, I'll have to give it a key. So the key I want is based on, I don't want customer number, so I'll take the little arrow at the side of it, and I'm going to base it on the last name. and I want it in ascending order, so I'm happy with that, so I'll say OK. It's now saying output duplicate records. I could choose to output records without duplicates and only look at the ones that don't have duplicates. But in this case, I'm looking for duplicates, so that's fine. I could also include their criteria, so that I could say output duplicate records if country equals Belgium. But I don't need to. I can say OK on that and see if we end up with any duplicate records. And we've got 2 boroughs in South Africa, a Diane Burrows and a Catherine Burrows. And you can see down at the bottom here on that bar that we've got 39 duplicate records. Okay. Duplicate doesn't necessarily mean there's 2 of them. You can see we've got a whole pile of Lees and a whole pile of Chans. But that might still give me an awful lot to look through. So instead of just looking for duplicates, let me go back to my customer database and just click up here. And this time I'm going to do an analysis and I'm going to look for duplicates detection. But this time I'm going to have more than one key. I'm going to have the last name and I'm going to have the first name. And I'm happy with that. I want to output the duplicate records. And now I've got my second one, and I don't have any duplicates, first name and last name. Okay. What I can, of course, look for are duplicates within country. If I close that one down because I don't have anything in it, and I can now come over here and delete that index, or that selected file rather. I've got my full database there, but if I go back to my duplicates over here, I can see there's an awful lot of Chans in China, an awful lot of Floras in Mexico. So I could say, I'm not interested in Lee Sandra and Lee San Yun, but I am interested in any Lees within China. Or I am interested in any Wongs in China. A Wing Wong and a Sandy Wong. So again, I could look at those and I could say, in addition to those duplicates on that, I want to go and look at, and I can do it from the full file or within the duplicate file. There's a problem in looking at it from within the duplicate file, that there might be something over here that my first selection wouldn't pick up, but my second selection might. If I do it on this one, because it didn't pick it up on the first one, I can only look inside here. So within this alone, I would not need to look for duplicate last name and country. I could simply say, give me duplicate country. Detection. And this time I'm looking for a duplicate based on a key of country. And you can see over on your left-hand side, it's now showing duplicates within duplicate within the customer. So these are only the duplicates within that file, not necessarily within that file. Okay. If I did simply duplicates on country in that file, looking for country, you can see that that duplicate file over on the left-hand side is now part of the customer file, whereas that duplicate is part of the duplicate file. And over here, you can see looking for duplicates in the country, I'm getting everyone regardless of last name. Okay, so I've got every single country there, seeing number of records 340. Every single country in this thing has more than one person within it. There's no countries with only one person. So that's not really what I wanted. Now if I try to delete that file now, if I go over to the left-hand side, right-click it and say delete, and tell it yes, gone. Okay, and it's removed it from here, obviously, because it's now gone. But there's my duplicates by name, and there's my duplicates by country within name. As I say, I could have done that in one hit by saying name and country, but in this case I didn't need to. Okay, so we're happy. I can also look, let me delete that one. Delete my duplicates. Now, it's quite common when you're doing this in real life to leave those. Okay, I'm deleting them simply because otherwise I get cluttered up with a whole pile of files, and I'll come back to it on the next course or the next webinar and look at it and say, now, which one was that? Okay, so I'm just removing them. Keep it clean. We're now back in our customer file. Now I'm going to look at, for example, credit limits. And I'm going to say analyze and show me duplicate credit limits. And that's showing me all the people with duplicate credit limits, and I've got 299 of them in the file. You can see up here we had 341 that we started with, and we've now got 299 of the 341 are duplicates. That's interesting. I wonder who are the ones who've only singletons have got those credit limits. Let me go back into my customer database, and I'll go into my analysis again, look for my duplicate keys, detection, but this time I'm wanting to output the records without duplicates. And again the key will be on my credit limit. And these are the people, we've got 42 of them, who have a unique credit limit. Okay? If I look at my duplicates, these are all the people who've got common credit limits. But these are the ones who've got the weird credit limits. And again, I could go up and look at those and say, well, I wouldn't expect a lot of people to have high credit limits. But I want to know what these are. Who these people are, what they are. Let me go and check them. Okay. Happy. There's an interesting one. 295,000, not 300,000. Not 290, 295,000. It's a strange credit limit. He's in Scotland. His name is Connor, which is a Scottish name, and his first name is Mohammed, which is not a Scottish name. But that may be quite legitimate. I can't tell just by looking at the data. All I can say is perhaps that is unusual. I should go and check who that person is. Okay. Show me the documentation behind it. Okay, happy so far. I'll close down my duplicates. I've left them over here so that I can simply click on them and they're back, but I'm back in my customer database again. Okay. If I look at that, it looks okay at the moment, but I may wish to move things around, exactly the same as anything else in Windows. If I go into the line, and I get a double arrow and click on it, I can give myself a bigger customer number or slide it back. If I wish to change the order, I want the country first. If I click in the country and hold it, then I can move it across. Okay. Now, what you're doing is changing what the view of the data is. You are not changing the data file. Okay. Critical element for IDEA, for ACL, for any of these programs is that it must not change the original live data. So all I'm changing is what it looks like on the screen, not the actual data file itself. The same thing if I extend that, I'm changing the length of it on the screen, not the length of the data field. If you do it within something like Excel and then save, you've actually extended the size of the field. So we haven't done that. Again, if I want to move it back, I can simply take it back to where it was. Okay. So you might want to try it and try moving things around. Try taking the credit limit column and shifting it next to the last name. Remember what you're trying to do? First time you click on it, it will simply highlight. If you click and try and drag, it will highlight 2 or 3. So I simply want to click on credit limit once to highlight it, then I can click and drag. Okay. Are we happy? Okay, again, let's go in and have a look at some of our database properties over here. Let's go and have a look at our field statistics. Okay. And we've got all of the information regarding the numeric fields only. I could say I want date fields, I want time fields. In this case, I want the numeric fields. And you can see there we've got 341 records. We've got number of zero items are 0. Our average value has now been plugged in, as has the minimum and the maximum. Okay. So if you want to have a look at which was the minimum, if you remember, if I click on that, there's my person in Finland who had the high value. And I could print that if I was particularly interested. Or I could say, show me the one with the lowest value, and these are all of the people who got that low value. And I could print those off. So if we have a whole stack of customers with high values, high balances, high discounts that they're getting or whatever, I can simply go and pick discounts and then click on it, and there they are. So I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to do anything fancy. These are all the people who are getting the high credit limits in this case, or the high discounts, or have the high account balances, or have the high salary, and I can simply say print that, and that will give me a printed list, which I can then go and say, can you explain why these people have got this high discount rate or this high balance, or whatever they happen to be. Okay. Again, we can have a look at the number of records. Okay. And we're only sitting with that one. And once we're happy with that, now we can go back and start looking at our data again. So if I go back into data, and this time what I want to do is I want to take that data and I want to do some sampling on it. So I will go into, up in the top on that menu bar, we shall go into sampling. Now this is not the advanced course, so we're not going into all the different types of sampling, but roughly you've got 3 basic kinds of sampling that we deal with normally as auditors: attribute sampling, monetary unit sampling, and variable sampling. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at random selection, and it says, okay, how many do you want to pick? Well, we'll pick 10. We want a sample of 10. Not quite sure why you'd want a sample of 10, but that's what we'll call it. And we'll call the file sample of customers. Okay. Now, that's fine, but which fields do we want? Well, we'll take them all. I could say clear all, and then pick them up one by one, or I could say include all. So we're happy with all. So I want a seed, random number seed. This is for the random number generator. It's going to look somewhere between 1 and 341. So if I say OK, there's 10 chosen randomly using my random number selector out of my customer base. Okay. And I can then go off and check those, etc. Everyone happy so far? If you're not sure how I did that, let me close it down and just do it again. I'll delete that sample of customers. What we did was we went into sampling. First of all, we were in our customer database, not our duplicates, not our non-duplicates, in the customer database. I'm going to go into sampling. I'm going to go into random sampling. I want 10 records chosen at random. Out of my full population, I could change the population size, and I'm going to call it sample of customers. And there's my sample of 10. I could now print those out and go and check. We've got credit limits. I can go and say, okay, show me the authorization documents for Georges Lars, for particularly for, who's my high value here? Perhaps these two, okay, Anthony McCrabb and Maria Cortez, and pick those ones out. And then show me the authorization for giving them that credit limit. Remember where we started from. What is it you want to know? If I want to know who the high value credit limits are, then I'm not going to use random sampling. If I want to look at a few and draw conclusions about the whole population, then I'm going to use sampling. If I wanted just to look at the high value ones, remember, all I would do is go into my credit limit and pick up my credit limit descending, and there's my high value ones. So I didn't need to sample, I've got those. But if I check those, I cannot then draw conclusions about everyone. I can only draw conclusions about those because I didn't sample randomly. Okay. If you wish to draw conclusions about many by looking at a few, you have no choice. You have to follow certain rules. Okay, happy. Thrilled and excited, I can tell by the vibration coming over the wires. Okay. Let's take a look at extracting some values. I'll kill off that index, so I'm back to my full database. And this time I want to say data, and I'm going to extract. And I'm going to do a direct extract. And I'm going to pick up all of those high value credit limits. So the file name, I'm going to give it, is going to be large credit limits. Okay, so I'm going to extract from my full customer database a file only containing those large credit limits. Now how do I get that? Well, in the middle you'll see what looks like a little calculator. That's my equation editor, and if I click on it, you may recognize this screen. So we're back to our equation editor, and this time I want to build it with the credit limit, which is down at the bottom here. Double click on that, and I want it greater than or equal to, and that's that one there. So I can click on that once, and this is numeric, so I don't need those quotations around it. I can put in my 30 30,000 for argument's sake. I want to see any credit limit greater than 30,000. Now, if by any chance I make a mistake and say 30,000 at that and try and tick it, it will say mismatch field type. So it's told me right away that I'm trying to do based on the type of field. This is a numeric field, and I'm trying to do it as an alpha field. So if I take out those two quotations, that should now work. If I'm not sure, I can always validate, and it says I now have a valid equation. So I'm happy. I will now tick it, and it's now saying extract from all records, or I could do it from a range, but from all records, anyone with a credit limit greater than 30,000 or equal to 30,000, and put it into a file called large credit limits. And when I'm happy with that, I can say OK. And we've got our large credit limits. If I take it and I wanted it even bigger, I can go into that large credit limit. I'll close off and delete the large credit limit file. Because I'm going to get myself confused if I don't. And this time I'll go in and say I'm going to extract large credit limits. And this time I'm going to make it where the credit limit is greater than or equal to 300,000. That should be okay. It is. Fine. I'll take that one. And we've got a much smaller sample. Okay. Now, what was wrong with that? From an audit perspective, what I did, remember, I went in on my data and I extracted to my file called large credit limits. I'll make it different now. Large-ish credit limits. For greater than 30,000. And I ended up with 61 records. And what I did, which an auditor shouldn't do, is then look at that and say, 61, ooh, that's an awful lot. Okay, let me try that for 300,000. Okay, we only got 5 for 300,000. So we've got large credit limits, we've only got 300, we've only got 5. Large-ish, we've got 61. I'll take the large and just check them. Remember, you start off with what is it you want to know. And if the criteria is we classify a large credit limit as anything over 30,000, then that's what I've got, and that's what I'm stuck with. And I cannot then turn around and say, oh, that's too many. Let me try and pare it down a bit. Because you're now altering your audit criteria to fit the data. If you need to know about anything over 30,000, that's what you need to know. Not 300,000, 30,000. Okay, this is the danger when you're dealing with a powerful tool like this, that you can say, well, yeah, okay, well that doesn't really exactly tell me what I want to hear. Let me play with this until I get a file that looks like what I want. Then I will conclude that that is correct. You have to start off with what do you want to know, and then go and take it from there. Okay. If we're happy with that, I'll close that down, I'll close that down, and I'll close that down. Now let's go and do it the hard way. We imported our customer database, and that was importing the easy way. Okay, so now we're going to do the more common one. We're going to our file and into our import assistant, and we're going to import to Excel. Sorry, import to IDEA. But this time we're going to pick up a text file. Okay, and the text file that we're going to pick up, again, I have to tell it where to find it. And the file we're going to pick up is sales.txt. So again, I'll look into my tutorial, and there's my sales.txt. So I'll double click on that, and I'm picking it up from there, and I'll say next. And it says, okay, I've got the file. That's the data that's on the file. It looks like it's fixed length. It might be, it might not. Let me try saying it's not fixed length. Okay. Let me go for delimited. Nope. I don't see anything changed there. Let me look at Ipsidic fixed length. Ah! Now, what it's done is it says this is what an Ipsidic file would look like. Now, an Ipsidic file is a file that's come from a mainframe using character representation in Ipsidic. What we're normally dealing with is file representations which are ASCII, which are coming from PCs, etc., ASCII type files. If this was an Ipsidic file, when I click on Ipsidic, it wouldn't look like that. It would look like that. Okay, but this is ASCII and it is fixed length, so I'll go to next. It says, okay, it looks like it's a 42 character record. I'm not sure, let me try a 43. Ah, I'm getting diagonal numbers. Okay, let me make that 41. It's not a guarantee, but if you have vertical columns, it's probably got the right record length. Okay, so now all we have to do is tell it what all of the data is. And to do that, you need a file layout. Now you've got a file layout on the next slide that you're looking at. And I have one here which I can't read because I've got it so small. What it's done when I said next is it's tried to create a file layout, and it's put lines where it thinks the field breaks are between them. And I can see here that my number starts in column 1 and finishes in column 7. Well, that says start in 1 and finish in 1. So I need to remove that field line. So if I simply go in to the field line and double click, it's gone. So I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's correct according to my layout that I have on my PowerPoint slide that you've got in front of you. So I'm happy with that. The next field should be the transaction date, so that's 2006-07-21. Well, I shouldn't have that field break there, so I'll double click on that one and remove it as well. And it's gone. Okay, so it's now from that position there, and you can see it's column 8, to that position there, which is column 12. The next one is my payment type, which is Amex, Visa, etc., so that looks okay. And the next one I'm looking at is the salesman who did this. Okay. On that one, I'm trying to read my typing here, goes from 20 for 3. So I've got 20, 21, 22. I need another field separator in there. To do that, I simply click once. If you put it in the wrong place, I can click twice to remove it. But in this case, I'm happy, so I've clicked once. Okay, my 3-digit file. Next one I want is a customer number, which is 5 digits. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll need another separator in there. Then comes my 2-digit product code, which is that 05. And thereafter, I've got the amount. So I'm happy with that. That is roughly my field layout according to the PowerPoint slide that you have in front of you. If you don't have that record layout, you can't do this. So if you're bringing in a file which is a straightforward text file, you need that record layout. Otherwise, you're finished. And the record layout that you bring in, or that you obtain, has to be the correct record layout. I have seen a situation where a person was given a record layout which showed that, for example, that position there, okay, that 2, that position was, well, in fact, let me take that out just now. That position there, let's say, that M, he was looking for the sex code and he was told it was in position 23. So he checked for position 23 equal to M, 0 records, equal to F, 0 records. So he said, well, what do we have? And he found G. Well, I said, what's G? We've only got one person and they've got a G. And when he looked at it, he found that according to his record layout, up to position 23 was supposed to be the surname. But they'd taken on a new employee, a guy called Seamus O'Shaughnessy McGurk, and they couldn't fit O'Shaughnessy McGurk into the size of the file name, or the size of the surname, so they'd extended the size of the file name, but they hadn't extended it on the printout they gave him. So he was looking in position 23, and he should now have been looking in position 33. So you need to have that file layout correct. Assuming that it is, and in this case it is, we know that, so we can say next. And it says, there's your data. Now that one is number 1. Well, we don't want it called number 1. We know that that, in fact, is our invoice number, so we will call it INV number. It is numeric, and we're happy with that. There are no decimals, so we're happy with that, so we'll go to the next one. You do not click next. If I click next at this point, it's going to take me to there. So I want to go back to here. Okay, I'll click on the next field. And my next field is my transaction date. Transaction date. And it says it's character. Now in this case we know it's not character, it's a date. So I want to click at the side, and these are all the possible types of character that you can have. In this case we know it's a date because it says so on my record layout. And it wants to know what kind of a date. And we know it's year, whoops, not 7-7, year, month, day. And the reason that we know that is because it says so on our record layout. Without that, we just don't know. Our Amex, we know, is our payment type. We know it is character because it's got alphabetics in the middle of it. The next one that we have, we know is our salesman. And again, we know that that is numeric, so we're happy with that. It's got no decimal places. The next one is our customer number. And again, it's numeric, and again, there are no decimal places. The next one is our product code. But this one, although it looks numeric there, we know it's not because it says so in a file layout. We know that in fact it's character. And the final one is our amount. And You'll see it's numeric, but this time we know that it's got 2 decimal places. If I leave that as 0, you'll see that it says the amount is 431. If I put that to 2 decimal places, you can see it will say the amount is 431.28. When I'm happy, I can see next. And here I can add any other fields that I want to, so I can build fields that say this times that equals the next. But I'm happy now, so I can say OK. Do I want to edit anything, say only credit limits over a certain amount or whatever? No, I'm happy with that, so I'll say OK. How would you like to use it? It's going to be called sales, and it'll be sitting in a database called sales, and I'm happy with that, so we'll say finish. Now I've already got it, but you want to have it, that's fine. And there's all my information that I put in with the invoice number, transaction date, payment type, salesman, customer number, product code, amount, etc. Okay. Are we happy? If in doubt, you can always go back and do it again. Just delete it, cancel, and go back and do the thing again. Okay, you have the information on your PowerPoint slides. If I go down through the PowerPoint slides to where you are, just going to bring myself to where you are. Picked a sample. We extracted the records for our credit limits, our big credit limits. We imported a text file, and this is where we are at the moment. So you've got the right file layout. There's your file layout that you were looking for. We defined a file. We didn't need an equation editor, so we want to import it, and then we want to create or generate our field statistics and call the database sales transactions, and then we want to finish. If you make a mistake, then you can always go back to data. If I've made a mistake here, I can go back into my data and go into field manipulation. There are all the fields that I defined. Oh, that was a character, it should have been numeric. I can change it. I want to add a field on that I forgot about. I can append. I want to take that one out because I'm not interested in it for this extraction. I can delete that. Okay. Happy. And again, now that we've got our sales information, we can go into our analysis. Well, we can go in and look at where we got it from. And that's the coding that we used. You may not have realized it, but that was the coding that you used. We'll create our field statistics, and there's our field statistics for all of the numeric ones. Some of them are meaningless, so we don't really want field statistics on salesmen because it's going to add them up, nor on our customer number, nor really on our invoice number. All we want is the amount. So we're happy with that. And again, I can look at, we've got minimum values, we've got negatives. Where did they come from? They came from that one. So we have a negative invoice. Okay? I can go and say, show me the supporting documentation for that negative. When I'm happy, I can go back into my data. And again, I can say I want to summarize my data. Sorry, I can go to my analysis and say I want to summarize. And now what I want to summarize on, okay, I want to summarize my by customer number, and then I want to summarize the field to total. I want to total up the amount per customer. Okay. Now the field name, file name is going to be summarization. We're going to create a database, and we're going to call it use quick database, quick summarization, and we'll call it summarized transactions. And say OK. And there we can see it's summarized for each customer, and you can see in there that customer 10102 has got 2 records. If I click on that, I can see which 2 records they are. Again, I can index that, descending, and these are my big customers where they've done lots of transactions. That one's huge. Let's have a look at him. Double click on there, and there we are. These are all of the transactions that that customer has put through. And one of them was for 3.5 million. So I can say, okay, let me go and find out what that one was. If I'm looking for abnormal transactions, this is how I do it. But once again, you need to know what you're looking for. If I want to find out who's got the lowest values, I can go into that one. And these are the ones with only one transaction. But it's not necessarily telling me the lowest transaction value. So if I click on there, there's someone with a transaction for 0. Who was that? They processed a cash payment for 0. Okay. Who paid in 0 amount? I've got the invoice number, I've got the customer number, I've got the salesman. I can go to the salesman and say, what are you processing 0 cash amounts for? What is this transaction? So I'm looking for anomalies within my data. Okay, are we happy? I hope so. Go through those at your leisure. Try them again. If you have any problems, you'll get our contact details, and you can always send us an email and say, how do I do this? I don't quite understand what's going on here. Or if you're really, really stuck, you can take all of these files and you can say, delete them all, because I want to start again. And you can go back and start again. Okay. Why? Because at the end of the day, just running forward to where you are on the slides. You need to establish, before you start, what are your prime control areas for any given area, and then identify controls governing several areas, because you're looking for evidence that those controls work or don't work. And there's a problem, because many of the controls that we rely on are preventative controls which do not leave behind evidence for you to go and analyze. So look for controls that provide evidence, and do not try to prove a negative. There is no evidence, therefore the control does not work. Or there is no evidence, therefore the control works. All you can say if there's no evidence is there is no evidence, therefore there is no evidence. Our primary areas of concern, when you're looking at any kind of computer records or computer system, there's a huge problem, because modern computer systems are complex, and the complex ones cannot be recreated manually. So if something goes wrong, it's gone wrong, and it's gone wrong drastically. And many computer records are intelligible only to computers. So you can't just look at the printouts, because half of the information never comes out on a printout. You're going to have to look inside the box. Most computers allow multiple access. So you can't go back to the old days when you used to have input documents and you could go check the input documents. There may be no documents. This could be someone phoning in with an order which gets entered straight into the computer and there is no documentary support. You get two kinds of users. One says computers can be trusted and they check nothing. The other says you can't trust computers and they check everything. Neither of which is correct. And just remember, when you're dealing with a computer system, to err is human. To really mess it up, you need a computer. So when we talk disasters, we mean disasters. Remember also, when you're using these tools, that application audit tools are not always CATs. You get different kinds of CAT, and a CAT is simply any tangible aid that assists the auditor. So I've got tools to obtain information. IDEA is a tool to obtain information if I use it that way. I get tools to evaluate controls. If I'm looking for the evidence, if the evidence on that control exists inside the box, I can extract the evidence to prove the control or not prove the control. If it doesn't exist inside the box, then I may have to go and look at documentary support. I may have to go and interview people. The fact that IDEA doesn't find it inside the computer doesn't mean it exists. Maybe it never went into the computer. I can have tools to verify that the controls exist. I can use, and you'll see later on in the series, that I can use IDEA to reproduce calculations and verify that the controls and calculations work as applied. And I can use my automated tools, the IDEAs of this world. For obtaining information, without the computer, we can still go and interview people. A lot of auditors, particularly IT auditors, get the impression that once you've got generalized audit software, all of these other techniques fall away and we don't use them anymore. Not true. You're going to have to go through this stage before you can decide what it is you want to look at with your CATs. So we'll interview people, we'll use questionnaires, we can use analytical audit flowcharts, and the one I happen to use is Visio. Again, it's a computer-assisted audit tool. It's not an interrogation tool, but it can help me map out particularly control flow within an organization. I can do documentation review, look for signatures, etc. Now, again, in a lot of modern systems, that documentation has been scanned into electronic digital form, so the documentation review may well involve looking at the information. But that documentation, when you scan in a document, you can scan it in basically two ways. You can scan it in as a graphic image, or you can scan it in as text. If it's in as text, I can interrogate it using IDEA. If it's in as a graphic image, it's basically a picture of text, and I cannot scan it using IDEA. There is software, for example, which can take a scanned image and extract the text from it, and I can then analyze that with IDEA. So you're never stuck. There's never only one way to do it. There are multiple automated ways of doing things. We've got application control matrices, which look at components' concerns in order to determine whether controls are adequate or inadequate. For verification, some auditors are still working on the basis you can test around the computer. And for certain criteria, you can do that. If I want to check that all transactions were authorized, then what I can do is I can take a listing of all transactions and simply go and check the authorization on every single one. I can run test data through a computer system to see if 2 plus 2 equals 4. I can reperform those key functions. I can reprocess high value items, low value items, medium value items, to see what comes out the other end. But at some point in time, I'm going to use my automated tools. And again, there are different varieties there. When you're looking at running test data through a system, your problem is how do you ensure that every possible combination of data has been tried? And one of the ways to do that is to use an automated tool called a test data generator. I can use my flowcharting packages. I mentioned Visio. I used to use one called Flowcharting 3. I can use specialized audit software. Now, specialized audit software has got some advantages and disadvantages. Typically, it's used when you want to do special things or you want to interrogate information which is not in a standard form. Let me give you an example. If I want to interrogate an IBM Xeos operating system, one of the files I would be interested in is a log file called the SMF log, the Systems Management Facility log. But there's a problem because all of the records on that have got different file layouts. Now that's not a problem in its own right because IDEA can handle multiple record layouts, no problem at all. But it's a variable record layout within a variable block. And IDEA cannot handle variable blocks, nor can ACL, nor can most of the standard audit software. I can do it by extracting the information from from SMF and putting it into a fixed block records, variable length records, but within fixed blocks, and then I can interrogate it. Or I can use a specialized piece of software called the SMF Analyzer, which is not written for the auditors, it's written for the systems programmer, but nevertheless I can use it. And it then becomes specialized audit software. That's all it does, it interrogates SMF. It can't interrogate anything else. I can buy specialized audit software, or I can write specialized audit software, or pay someone to write it for me. If I want to go into a particular file structure or do something strange that I can't do with my normal software that I've got, the problem is if you're getting someone to write it, it's going to be expensive. If you write it yourself, it's going to be expensive because you are an expensive resource. And whether you write it or somebody else writes it, you're going to have to test it to make sure that it does do what you think it does and what you want it to do. So specialized audit software, under certain circumstances, can be very powerful. And under other circumstances, it can be a damn nuisance because it's so expensive. And typically, you use it for this one audit, and if you ever come back to do the same thing, they'll have changed the audit objectives, or they'll have changed the record layout, or they'll have changed something that means take what you did before, throw it away, and start again. You can also get specialized audit software that looks at data in a different way. Again, one that's not specifically written for auditors, one called Clementine. There's another one called NetMap. And what they do is they look at relationships among data, and they map it out for you so that you can see that this is connected to that, is connected to this, is connected to that, is connected to that. It doesn't do the kind of standard interrogation that you can do using IDEA, but IDEA doesn't do the kind of mapping you can do with that. So what is it you want to do? You choose the tool for the job. Utility programs. These are the standard programs that come with the operating environment. And it could be, for example, Windows. If I want to know whether a file exists on the system or not, I'm going to use search. I'm not going to use IDEA. If I want to copy something, I can bring it into IDEA and then write it out to a file somewhere else. Or I can say copy. So never forget that you've got a whole pile of utilities that came with the machine that allow you to back up, copy, print, restore, etc. And then we have the generalized audit softwares of this world. The generalized audit softwares, much cheaper to implement than specialized. Specialized can do anything that you want it to do, but it's going to cost you. Your maintenance cost, if it's not the same next year that you want to do, either you throw it away and start again, or you're going to have to change everything that you did last year. You're going to have some kind of specific IS skills, either to write it or to verify it. And as I say there, a high degree of obsolescence when you're using that kind of thing. Generalized audit software, on the other hand, come with prefabricated audit tests. And that's terrific, but there are limitations within that as well. For example, we looked at sampling with an idea, and I told you about the 3 different types. Now, those are the 3 types of sampling that auditors most commonly use. But if I am doing something strange and exotic, like I'm looking at a very low population size, or I'm looking at an area which is not amenable to that kind of testing because it does not have a normal distribution, a statistically normal distribution, then I may have to use a non-parametric test, a Kruskal-Wallis test, or a Mann-Whitney test, whatever it happens to be. Those are not there in ACL, and they're not there in IDEA, and they're not there in most of the generalized audit software that you can buy out there. For that, I'm going to have to go and buy specialized software for interrogation statistically. I happen to use one called NCSS, the number crunching statistical system, but there's a stack of stuff out there. And this will get heavily into deep statistics. But once again, you need to know what you're looking for, you need to know the appropriate test, and when you've done it, you need to know what the answer means. Never forget that Excel has got a whole pile of additional statistical techniques where you can do things like regression analysis, correlation coefficients, etc., which you cannot do with generalized audit software normally. Having said that, you'll probably find that the next release will come out with all those things in it. But generally, you've got those prefabricated audit tests. Each use is a one-off. You use it, you throw it away. You saw me do those interrogations and throw away the files because it's so fast. If I need to do it again, I'll do it again. If I need to do it again but slightly differently, I'll do it again but slightly differently. The cost to run a test is comparatively low, so I can use it once, throw away. I've got direct control. I don't need to go to IT and say, please could you write me a program that will extract this. Oh, it's in the wrong order. Please can you give me it in a different order? Because everything is pre-done for me, the development cost of developing an interrogation is very low, and it's very fast to implement. Okay. Click, 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 go. And that's it done. We use it for things like detective examination of the file. So I have a file and I want to see if anyone has negative credit limits, if we have negative stock in store, if we have duplicate invoices, if we have missing purchase orders. Anything that I want to look at with a detective view in mind, tell me what the question is and we'll figure out how to inquire. I can verify processing controls. If I know that this is the way that a discount is supposed to be calculated, I can use my audit software to calculate the discount in that way and then compare it to the discount that's on file and say, are they different? Show me any that are different. If so, I want to know why this isn't adding up correctly. I can do file interrogations and simply say, show me the high value items, show me the high risk customers, show me the high volume customers, And an interesting one, management inquiries. Be aware and beware of management inquiries. I do know one head of internal audit for a car manufacturer who got fed up because he kept getting management coming and saying, we need to know if the following is true, and they would give them an interrogation, and they would say, yeah, sure, no problem, we'll do that for you. Bang, and they did it. Right, can you let me have that every week? Hang on a second. I'm not auditing the controls. I'm now becoming the control. There's something wrong here. And what they discovered was that the management had gone to IT and said, we need to know this information. And IT had said, yeah, not a problem. We can write a program that will do that for you. The cost to your cost center will be $1,000, and it will take probably a week to do it. We should be able to do that in about 2 months' time. And they said, really? I'll tell you what, forget it just now, and they went to audit. And our audit became an alternate data analysis area for management. And he got fed up with this, so one time when they came and asked him to do it, they said, okay, we'll do it, and they did it once. And they said, can you do it from now on? And he said, no, but I'll give you the software, and you can do it from now on. So they had 3 copies which they'd bought for their 3 IT auditors, and he bought another 10 copies and gave it to management and said, if it's in there, you can extract with this. So be careful that you don't become an alternate data mining house for management. Types of audit software, different kinds that you can get. You can get program generators that will generate programs in Pascal, C++, in the old days even COBOL. And then you can take the source code and amend it and make it more efficient or whatever you want to do with it. You get macro languages where you give it an instruction and it will bust it out into a whole string of instructions, which is what you saw happening within IDEA. This is the script that it created. You can get audit-specific tools. You can get data downloaders of different kinds. And of course, you've got all of the standard micro-based software like your Excels, like Access, anything that you can buy that you would not necessarily normally use for an audit, but nevertheless can be used. If you've already got it and you've already bought it, go ahead and use it. Some people will turn around and say to me, why should I buy IDEA or ACL when I've already got Excel? What can IDEA do for me that I can't do in Excel? And the answer is probably very little. But if you're going to do it in Excel, it will take you a day to set up the macros, etc. If you're going to do it in IDEA, it's going to take you 10 minutes. And that's the kind of differential. All I can tell you is that internal audit at Microsoft went and bought generalized audit software. Now, if you work for Microsoft and you want to buy a piece of software which is not Microsoft software, you better have a damn good reason. And they were given permission to go ahead and do it. Our software functions that we can do our normal file access, we can do our arithmetic operations, we can add things up, we can subtract things, divide things through, calculate averages, calculate values. We can do logic operations, if, and, or, else, not. You saw that when we did that. We want to filter it for the branch code equal to 2, country equal to South Africa, credit limit greater than whatever. We can update. Now that's an interesting thought. You can update. I said to you that with audit software you cannot update the live data, and that's true. But I can take a record this time and save that file, and next year I can compare the two. And I can produce a variation report that will show me how it's been updated. I can produce output going to printouts, output going to graphs, we can do our statistics, we can do file comparisons, and there's all kinds of graphics are built into the system. Which CAT do I need? Depends. Depends on the audit objective and the audit technique. Start off with what do you want to know. Then you look at where is the evidence. Then you decide how am I going to get to the evidence. If the evidence is in somebody's brain, I will go and interview the person. If it's a criminal, I might interrogate the person. I've chosen my appropriate technique. Now I can choose the tool. If I'm going to interview them, do I do it face-to-face? Do I do it by telephone? Do I do it using Skype? How am I going to interview them? In the same way as if I have decided that the information is inside the computer, how am I going to get to it? Now I can choose the appropriate tool. But I still need to decide what is it that I want to know. Am I trying to verify the processing? Or am I trying to verify the results of the processing? Do I want to be sure that when a transaction goes through a computer system, that the computer system is working correctly, because I can do that using my CATs? Or do I want to prove that everything that went in came out and came out correctly, because I can do that with CATs? Or everything that came out came from a valid input, because I can do that with CATs? So I need to know what it is I want to know in order to get it right. Common pitfalls: getting the wrong file. You go and extract the file and you find that you're not looking at today's file, you're looking at yesterday's file, or last week's file, or last year's file, or a test file, or a file that somebody gave you which only contains half of the information. Getting the wrong layout. The nice thing about extracting from Access, from an ODBC compliant database, from Excel, is you get the structure of the data with the data. The structure of the data is what's called metadata, is data describing the data. And when you're dealing with those and you bring them down, you get the two together. I mentioned to you ODBC. ODBC is the standard for open database connectivity, which all relational databases are supposed to comply with. Now, to access those, all I need is on my computer, my PC, I simply need the appropriate ODBC drivers for that particular database. And if I've got SQL, I can load on those drivers. If I've got Oracle, I can load on the Oracle drivers. Once those drivers are on, then all I have to do is say this is coming from an ODBC database, and it will say which one. And I can say I want it from MS Access, or I want it from Oracle. And it will take those drivers and it will say, okay, these are the Oracle databases you've got. Which one are you interested in? I'm interested in the sales one. Fine. Here are the tables within that sales one. We've got sales, we've got customers, we've got destination depots, whatever it happens to be. Which tables are you interested in? And you can extract that. Okay, so you get it, the layout, automatically. If you're getting it from a text file, if you're getting it from a print file, you've got to have your hands on that right layout before you can actually determine and direct the computer. This field is there from that character to that character. It is numeric. There are 2 decimal places, etc. In the same way as getting the wrong layout, because the layout is out of date, the documentation can be out of date. And if the documentation is out of date, you might be trying to prove that the system does something that it doesn't do anymore, or that it does in a different way. And you can therefore run all the CATs that you like, and at the end of a week you can turn out and say the system is deficient in the following areas. And as soon as you produce that, someone's going to say, but we changed it 6 months ago, it doesn't do it that way anymore. So that documentation has got to be up to date. Prejudging results. can be death to the auditor. When you decide that what you're looking for is a fraud and it should look like this, and you find a record that looks like that, therefore automatically it is a fraud. Never believe what the first printout tells you, particularly if you wrote the program yourself. And that brings us to the end. Are there any questions? And don't be shy.
Thank you very much, Richard. This was excellent, and I'm sure that everyone will find a lot of valuable information in this. Thank you again for joining us for today's webinar and the introduction to IDEA software and the basics of working with the software. This is the first in our series. We will be conducting additional webinars on this topic. The purpose of our Training Without Travel webinars is to provide you with high-quality, low-cost, online alternative training solutions covering timely topics with value-added resources and tools that you can use in your job. We bring the world's best subject matter experts, including Richard Cascarino, directly to your desktop with timely information. And we look forward to you joining us for our next webinar. Thank you, Richard.
You're very welcome, and I hope you all found some use.
Great. Thanks. Thank you.